There is a specific kind of silence that descends when the day is finally over. The emails are answered, the doors are locked, and the streetlights outside cast long, still shadows across your floor. Logic tells you that this is the moment to exhale. This is the time for rest. But instead of peace, you feel a low-frequency hum vibrating just beneath your skin. It starts as a subtle tightening in your solar plexus, a phantom weight pressing against your chest as you try to read a book or watch a movie. Your eyes scan the corners of the room. Your ears prick up at the sudden settling of the house or the generic hum of the refrigerator in the empty kitchen. You are logically safe, yet your body is behaving as if you are standing in the middle of a battlefield, 5 seconds before the ambush. Most people think that anxiety is a reaction to a visible threat, a lion in the grass, or a conflict at work. But the truth is, the most exhausting form of fear is the one that arrives when absolutely nothing is wrong. It is the anxiety of peace. It is the terrifying realization that the absence of chaos feels more dangerous than the chaos itself, because, in the chaos, at least you know what you are fighting. If this sounds familiar, if you find yourself unable to turn off the sentry mode, even in the sanctuary of your own bedroom, you are not broken. You are not overreacting. You are simply a highly efficient survival machine, operating on an outdated map. You are a vessel of high-fidelity protection, keeping a promise to a version of yourself that no longer exists. We often label this state as neuroticism or generic anxiety, dismissing it as a defect in character or a simple lack of mental discipline. We tell ourselves we should just calm down, as if it were a choice. But let us strip away the moral judgment and look at the architecture of what is actually happening. What you possess is not a disorder. It is a sophisticated, high-velocity form of data collection. You are not jumpy. You are hyper-perceptive. You are a human seismograph, capable of detecting tremors in the emotional atmosphere that others sleep through. It is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition, operating at an elite level. It is not a refusal to be happy. It is a biological prioritization of safety over satisfaction. You must understand that your brain, specifically the ancient, autonomic parts of it, does not care about your career goals, your relationship status, or your desire to feel peaceful on a Tuesday evening. It cares about one thing only: keeping you alive until tomorrow morning. For your nervous system, happiness is a luxury, but survival is a mandate. And in the environment you likely adapted to, relaxing was dangerous. The organism that closed its eyes too tight was the one that didn't see the threat coming. So, this behavior you struggle with, this constant scanning of the perimeter, is actually a biological reflex. It is a survival strategy that has been practiced so many times, it has become your default neural wiring. You have trained your body to view calm waters as deceptive. To your primitive brain, silence is not restorative. It is the breathless moment before the predator strikes. You have become an expert at waiting for the other shoe to drop. So much so that when the shoe doesn't drop, you invent the sound of it falling, just to resolve the tension. You are trading your peace for certainty, because certainty, even painful certainty, feels safer than the unknown. But while this strategy kept you safe in the past, your biology is paying a steep, compounding price for it today. And to understand that price, we have to look at what is happening inside your nervous system right now. To understand why you cannot rest, we must look at the machinery of your survival. Deep within the temporal lobes of your brain, the amygdala is currently operating in overdrive. This almond-shaped structure is your threat detection center, and right now, yours is stuck in the on position. Think of it like a smoke detector that has been calibrated so sensitively that it doesn't just go off when there is a raging fire, it screams at the slightest drift of steam from a hot shower. It treats the mundane uncertainty of life, an unanswered text, a change in tone, a quiet room, as a 5-alarm blaze. Because this alarm is constantly ringing, it triggers a phenomenon known as prefrontal cortex shutdown. The prefrontal cortex is the logical, rational part of your brain that knows you are safe in your living room. But when the alarm sounds, the amygdala hijacks the controls and locks logic out of the room. Think of it like a riot on a ship, where the panicked crew locks the calm, experienced captain in the brig. The captain knows there is no iceberg, but the crew is steering the ship based on terror, not coordinates. You cannot think your way out of this anxiety, because the part of your brain responsible for thinking has been taken offline. Consequently, your body is flooded with a continuous, low-grade cortisol drip. Cortisol is the stress hormone designed to mobilize energy for a fight. But when there is no enemy to fight, that energy has nowhere to go. It sits inside your tissues, vibrating. Think of it like pressing the accelerator of a sports car all the way to the floor, while the gear stick is locked in park. The engine is screaming, the fuel is burning, the chassis is shaking, but you are not moving. You are exhausting yourself simply by sitting still. This explains the paradox of being tired but wired. You are physically exhausted because your internal engine has been revving at maximum RPM all day. Yet you cannot sleep because the sentry at the gate refuses to abandon its post. You must realize that this system is not malfunctioning. It is performing its duty with heartbreaking loyalty. Your brain is not trying to hurt you. It is trying to keep you alive in an environment it perceives as dangerous. It believes that if it relaxes for even a second, the disaster you have been outrunning will finally catch up. But biology doesn't happen in a vacuum. Your nervous system was wired this way for a reason. It was shaped by a specific environment, long ago. Maybe you grew up in a home that felt less like a sanctuary and more like a minefield, where the emotional climate could shift from tropical to glacial in the span of a single heartbeat. You learned early on that safety was not a guaranteed baseline. It was a fragile, temporary state that had to be earned, monitored, and frantically maintained. Maybe you grew up in a house dominated by a volatile parent, where the mood of the entire family depended on the mood of one person. You became an expert meteorologist of human emotion, learning to read the microscopic twitch of a jaw muscle or the specific heavy thud of footsteps on the stairs. You learned that peace was not a time to relax. Peace was simply the terrifying interval between explosions. You spent your childhood waiting for the detonation, holding your breath, trying to be as frictionless as possible. You sat on the living room rug, freezing mid-motion, thinking, if I stay very quiet, if I don't ask for anything, maybe the anger won't find me today. Or maybe it was quieter. Maybe you were the child who grew up in the suffocating grip of the silent treatment. In your home, conflict wasn't loud, it was cold. Love was something that could be withdrawn without notice. You learned that a slam of a cupboard door meant you had transgressed, but no one would tell you how. You had to guess. You had to become a detective of silence, analyzing the dead air for clues. You lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing conversations in your head. Did I talk too much at dinner? Is that why Mom isn't looking at me? How do I fix this before morning? But perhaps neither of these dramatic scenarios fits. This is the good childhood trap. Maybe your house was technically safe. Maybe there was always food on the table, the bills were paid, and no one ever raised a voice. But there was a profound, echoing emotional distance. Maybe your parents were physically present, but emotionally absent, distracted by work, buried in their own unhealed trauma, or simply incapable of deep attunement. In this environment, you were loved, but you were not seen. You were an object to be managed, not a soul to be understood. You learned that your needs were a burden, that your emotions were too much, and that the only way to maintain the bond was to suppress your own aliveness. You learned to whisper to yourself, "I will handle this on my own. I won't bother them. I will be the easy one." In all these scenarios, you signed an invisible contract with the world. I am safer when I am invisible. I must shrink to survive. You learned that to be fully yourself, loud, messy, needy, spontaneous, was to risk rejection or retaliation. So, you amputated parts of your personality. You traded your authenticity for attachment. You didn't do this because you were weak. You did it because you were a brilliant little survivalist. You scanned the room not to control others, but to regulate your own safety in a world that felt too big and too unpredictable. It is important to say, gently, that your parents likely did not wake up intending to wire you for anxiety. They were likely victims of their own unhealed patterns, carrying ghosts from their own childhoods that they never learned to exercise. They passed the baton of fear because it was the only heirloom they had. But while we can offer them understanding, we must also acknowledge the cost. And so, that 7-year-old child is still running your life today. They are still sitting in the boardroom of your brain, wearing your adult clothes, trying to keep that invisible contract. They are still trying to predict the explosion that never comes. But there is a paradox here. Here is the most important reframe you will ever hear. What you call anxiety or overthinking is actually a mislabeled form of high-performance intelligence. The very traits that torment you, your sensitivity, your inability to shut off, your obsessiveness, are the exact same traits that allowed you to survive. Your childhood environment was not just a source of pain, it was an intensive training camp. It was a crucible that forged you into a master observer of the human condition. Because you had to anticipate danger to survive, you developed a skill set that most people will never possess. You possess the gift of hyperperception. You can walk into a room and immediately sense the temperature of the emotional currents. You can hear what isn't being said in a conversation. You notice the micro-expressions that fleet across a face in a millisecond, the tightening of a lip, the flicker of an eyelid, and you know exactly what they mean. You are a walking lie detector. You are the friend who knows someone is hurting before they have even realized it themselves. Your silence was not empty. It was a library where you learned to read human nature better than any textbook could teach. You became a vigilant guardian, a seer, capable of navigating complex emotional landscapes in the dark. But here is the tragedy of that gift. It is currently killing you. The problem is not the skill itself. The problem is the application. You are a soldier who has returned home from the front lines, but no one ever told you the war is over. You are still patrolling the perimeter of your life, wearing full tactical gear, treating every shadow like an insurgent. You are using a wartime weapon in a peacetime garden. This hypervigilance, which was once your greatest asset, has become your heaviest burden. It is exhausting to be a radar dish that never powers down. It is lonely to be the only one who sees the cracks in the foundation, while everyone else is enjoying the party. You are trying to use a survival mechanism to build a thriving life, and it isn't working, because survival and thriving require opposite energy systems. Survival requires rigidity, suspicion, and armor. Thriving requires softness, trust, and vulnerability. You cannot hug someone while you are holding a shield. You cannot feel the sun on your skin if you are wearing a hazmat suit. The armor that kept you safe is now keeping you suffocated. The walls you built to keep the monsters out are now keeping the love out. But here is the truth. A shield is useful in battle, but it is heavy to carry forever. And maybe, just maybe, it is time to set it down. The instinct is to surgically remove this anxiety, to cut out the part of you that trembles so you can finally be normal. But you cannot hate a part of yourself into healing. This hypervigilance is not a monster. It is a dedicated employee who has been working double shifts for 20 years without a break. It is a scared child wearing armor. And you do not heal a scared child by screaming at them to shut up. You heal them by listening. So, the shift is not about fixing yourself. It is about integration. Stop trying to fire the sentry. Instead, thank them. Imagine your mind is a car. For years, fear has been driving, swerving at every shadow. The goal is not to kick fear out of the car. If you shove it in the trunk, it will only scream louder and bang on the seats. The goal is simply to move fear into the passenger seat. It can come along for the ride. It can point out the dangers, but it is no longer allowed to touch the steering wheel. Here is your micro step. It is a practice of radical observation. The next time that phantom tightness rises in your chest at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, for no reason, do not distract yourself. Do not pick up your phone. Do not pour a drink. Just freeze. Put a hand on your chest, close your eyes, and simply say to your nervous system, I see that you are trying to protect me. Thank you. But look around. There is no tiger here. Don't try to make the feeling go away. Just sit with it for 30 seconds. Watch the wave of anxiety rise, crest, and, because you are not fighting it, eventually crash and recede. You are retraining your amygdala by showing it, again and again, that the alarm can ring and nothing bad happens. You are teaching your body that it is safe to stand down. And when you make this small shift, something profound happens. It is not just about feeling better, it is about discovering a whole new way of existing. Ultimately, this journey is about more than just calming a restless nervous system. It is about a fundamental philosophical shift in how you relate to existence itself. You have spent years worshipping at the altar of control, believing that if you could just predict every variable, if you could just anticipate every disaster, you would finally be safe. But control is an illusion. It is a heavy, rusted cage that you built to keep the chaos out, only to realize you had locked yourself in with the fear. True safety is not the absence of threat. True safety is the deep, internal knowing that no matter what happens, you will remain standing. It is shifting your trust from the external world, which will always be chaotic, to your internal world, which is infinite. You are not a victim of your biology. You are a weary traveler standing at the gates of your own freedom. You are a seeker who has mistaken hypervigilance for wisdom, and you are finally ready to learn the difference. When you finally allow yourself to surrender the watch, you are doing something wildly courageous. You are choosing vulnerability over armor. And yes, without the armor, you might get scratched. You might feel the sting of the wind or the burn of the sun. But you will also feel the warmth of a hand, the softness of a bed, and the quiet grace of a moment simply passing. The armor that protects you from pain also protects you from joy. The wall that keeps out the enemy also keeps out the light. You have been so busy surviving your life that you forgot to inhabit it. You have been guarding an empty castle. It is time to lower the drawbridge. It is time to retire the sentry who has been awake since you were 7 years old. Tell them they did a good job. Tell them the perimeter is clear. And then, step out of the watchtower and walk into the garden you have been defending but never enjoying. The air is different down here. It smells like the present moment. It smells like permission. You are not safe because the world is perfect. You are safe because you are finally home, inside yourself, and you have stopped treating your own soul like a stranger. The silence is not waiting to hurt you. It is waiting to hold you.